And so when you immigrate here, you're part of the American culture, and you are really subconsciously consuming these anti-Black messages. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, people of color are also anti-Black just as a default of being American. Yes, I think
And
it's
I
important to, whether you take a webinar or you read a book like Stamped from the Beginning, and you learn the history of racism in this country and how it's really a system, so that we stop blaming African American people for the disparities that exist and start blaming the system that has allowed these disparities to exist and continue to persist. But it's so important to center race, but it makes people feel uncomfortable, right? And so we have to talk about it, but we have to be willing to face that elephant and be uncomfortable. And I think another thing that I've found talking about it within Indian context is being willing to explore your own anti-Black bias and your own prejudices, and realizing that if you're human, then you have bias, right? And not negating that and saying, no, but I have a Black friend, or I'm married to a Black person, or my best friend. It doesn't matter, right? It's really something that is in all of us. And I think it's also important to remember that being anti-racist doesn't happen over a 1 hour course, or 1 year of taking classes or reading books. You know, it's a continual lifelong process. I think it's almost human nature for people to segregate, right? If you look at if you just go to like a college, I'm a professor, so you walk through my college, you got Black students here, the Indian students here, the Filipino students here. And a lot of times we learn and stereotyping, and we learn prejudices through the process of communicating with our families and our societies and even our peers. And so it's so important to disrupt that stereotype and the learned prejudices that we have by getting out of our bubbles, you know, and desegregating, you know, these groups that tend to form. Because if we don't get to know African American people or Black people, and this is for people who are non-Black or non-African American, then we're not going to understand that these stereotypes are faulty, right? So I think it's really important to get out of our bubbles and use our privilege as people of color to amplify the voices of people who don't hold a microphone, which right now in this country are African American people. So I just want to encourage you to think about those two things.